My screen is visible, right?
Yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So, how to hide this? Okay, good. So, before starting this lecture, you know about my topic, that is hyperspectral remote sensing technique in application. And then in the behind, you can see it is a one of the hyperspectral satellite. First, you can see the first launch satellite we call as Hyperion satellite in the inside, and it provides measurement of Earth surface using this state-of-the-art hyperspectral technology. So, what is this hyperspectral? Why the technology?
Your voice is
Of
breaking, sir.
this, so there are some means more benefit as compared to the older one, multispectral. So coming to know that you already know about your. Hello. Hello.
Sir, your voice is breaking, sir.
It's still breaking. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Now I
Voice
think
is
it's okay.
breaking, sir.
Now can you hear me?
Now it's
Yes,
better.
sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's clear. Better than. Okay. Okay. So what I'm trying to say that there are, if you see our older sensors, like previously we have images in our grayscale format. Like if you see your television, previously we have only black and white television available with us, and that time you can say we have only one band in that. We are watching most of the things in gray band, or you can say grayscale. That is a shade from black to white. So then we have some advancement in this remote sensing application. Instead of having a black and white scale, we got color images. Like if you remember your time that after that black and white phase, we get color TVs in our home. And in that color TVs, if you see, we have generally three discrete band. We call it, what are those bands? We call it RGB, red, green, and blue. So that time we have three band images. And why we have that RGB image in our color TV or in our sensors? Because we know that RGB is a primary color, and when we mix this primary color, we can get secondary colors, we can get tertiary colors, and so many different colors is possible by using RGB. So initially we started with this three band combination, we call it RGB, and this is, you can say, this is the photograph of three band image. Then further advancement happened. Then we got our list three sensors, we get Landsat sensors, we get some other sensors. That is multispectral. Multispectral means we have more than three band in those satellites or sensors. Like if you see list three, we have RGB and then we have NIR. So what is the advantage of this getting from 3 band to 30 band image or 3 band to 12 band image in remote sensing? So if you see that in 3 band image we have only RGB, but many features like plants and other features, they are also responding much better in NIR and SWIR, means near infrared and shortwave infrared bands. So what happened, because of advancement of sensors, we have now more bands in the satellite images. Like in our list 3, we have multispectral, and afterwards multispectral, we are getting now this hyperspectral technology. So in hyperspectral technology, what is there? Instead of this 30 bands, we have around 250 bands, 300 bands, and recently, if you see average NGM images, we have 400 bands. So what is the importance of those bands? We are if you see the development from one single band, we moved to 3 discrete bands, then we got this multispectral satellite around 15 to 16 band in Landsat 8 if you see. And then in hyperspectral, we are getting around 300 bands. And now the next generation is, you can say that we are now getting this ultra spectral. Ultra spectral, if you see that we have 300 plus bands in these sensors, but ultra spectral is still in progress. So still it is not launched because hyperspectral is advancing and we are having satellite related to hyperspectral. So once this hyperspectral technology is over, there is chance of getting the ultra spectral technology, in which we will get much more bands as compared to previous advancement. So what is the advantage? What is the advantage of this? Hello? Hello?
On or before Diwali, if I am not mistaken.
Hello?
Please mute all, please.
Okay, so can you hear me? Hello?
Unmuted.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please, because sometime what happened, we lost internet. So after 2-3 slides, I know that I lost my internet or somebody else lost internet. So again, I have to repeat from previous 2-3 slides. So please speak something in between so that we will be active and listen these things. So what I'm trying to say that after hyperspectral we get ultraspectral, and ultraspectral we are having more number of bands as compared to previous advancements. So you already know about, I assume that you already know about, because the remote sensing FDP, you know about different type of resolutions like spatial resolution, spectral resolution, radiometric resolution, and temporal resolution. So what is the main advantage of this hyperspectral over other previous development? Like it has high spectral resolution as compared to multispectral or 3-band images before. So why it has high spectral resolution? Because if you see most of the previous satellites, that in previous satellite, like in Landsat, if you see Landsat, this block is Landsat. In Landsat, we have only ETM plus, we have only 7 bands. If you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 4 is in visual, and visual is in infrared region, and 2 is in sphere region, and 1 is in thermal infrared region. And if you see the spatial resolution, we are getting around 30 meter in visible, in sphere 30 meter, in thermal we are having 60 meter in Landsat satellite. So if we talk about the spectral resolution, means number of spectral bands available with Landsat, it is only 7. But if you see again the Aster, if you see Aster, we have around 14 bands. So there is an improvement in spectral resolution from 7 spectral bands. We have now more spectral band in this case, and if you see, it is around 14, 3 in near infrared and visible, and you can say 4 and 5 to 9 in sphere, and then in thermal infrared we have 10 to 14. So we have the higher spectral resolution as in Aster images. But if you see our hyperspectral images, if you see there are a number of bands available in this. It is around 256 bands available in hyperspectral sensors. So in terms of spectral resolution, there is a revolution. You can see that instead of 14, now we have 256 bands in from a satellite image. So if you see Landsat tile, in Landsat tile we have 7 bands. It's like a cards, cards, playing cards. Most of you know the cards. So if you see, there is a one card and there is another card on the top of that, and there is another card. So there is a stack of cards. Okay, so there is a stack of cards, and that stack is like a made up of several individual cards. Similarly, these satellite images are also framed like this. In hyperspectral, this one band you can consider as a one card, and in this way we have 256 cards here stacked over each other. So instead of getting a discrete bands, we are getting a cube, or we are getting this type of stacked satellite images. So that's why we are calling it hyperspectral cube, because if you take a small section, cubical section, then you will get number of images over here, and each image or each band or each card represent one wavelength. So if you plot, suppose this top one, if you plot, there is a one wavelength. If you plot second, there is a second wavelength. Then it is a third wavelength, fourth wavelength. So if you plot all these stacked cards, then you will get a wavelength profile, or we call it spectral signature. So what we have to do, we have to have this hyperspectral sensor. Generally with human eye we can see only what is there, like there is a water, forest, plant, but we can do qualitative analysis. We can say that is the water, we can see that is the forest, agriculture area, but somebody asks what is the area of that agriculture. So by eyes we cannot say the area. We need to have particular quantifiable information, and that is provided by some sensors. In hyperspectral sensor, what we do, we can provide area as well as we can provide information of each and every object in that image at species level, or at mineral level, or at water quality level, and so many other levels. So that is only possible with hyperspectral satellite images, not with the other multispectral or other satellite images, because they have missing information here. See, if you see here, we have all the information here. There is a gap here, we have information. There is a gap here, we have information. So in hyperspectral, we are getting information at each and every wavelength, and it is a continuous information. So after stacking all those images, if you take a block, we will call as hyperspectral cube, and you are getting spectral signature. Like in our case, no two person have similar thumb impression. If you have put your thumb impression on some paper, no two people have same type of impression. Similarly, no two objects have similar type of spectral signature. And that technology we are using for object identification, because this spectral signature is very unique. No two spectral signatures are same. If we have two different objects, for example, if you talk about minerals, if you see there are calcite, it's a calcium carbonate mineral. If you talk about dolomite, it is calcium magnesium carbonate. So these two minerals are very close. If you see, these are very close, calcium carbonate and calcium magnesium carbonate. This is very tough to identify using your eyes. But if you take the spectral signature of both the minerals, calcite or dolomite, you will find that there is some differences in the spectral signature. So what I'm trying to say, that no two objects have same type of spectral signature, just like our thumb impression, they are unique. Similarly, if you talk about species or plant, that if you see a spectral signature of potato plant, if you see spectral signature of wheat, and if you see spectral signature of paddy, all these spectral signature are different, because they have their unique properties in their leaves, and because they have uniqueness in their leaves, like calcium magnesium carbonate and calcium carbonate, there is some difference because of that magnesium. So that will appear over here. Similarly, in species discrimination or species analysis or crop type mapping, we are trying to find that spectral signature, because that spectral signature is species specific. Like it is different for potato and paddy and rice. So this hyperspectral, we get a continuous spectral signature, which is not possible with either Landsat or ASTER or any other multispectral satellite. So how things are getting different, if you see this plot here, so if you see this plot here, that initially in 1980s we had thematic mappers. Thematic mappers means we have only 5 or 6 band in this thematic mapper. And I'm plotting one mineral called kaolinite. This is a mineral, and I'm trying to get the spectral signature of kaolinite mineral. And if you see that this is a thematic mapper image of this kaolinite. So you can see that kaolinite only 6 bands. So I just draw a line diagram over here. So if we combine this band, that here if you see it is a straight line. Means there is no features you can get over here because it's straight line. There is no changing line over here. But after development of multispectral satellite, you can see at 50 nanometer difference, we call it Garis satellite, that we have also band over here. I hope you can see my cursor, right? Can you see my cursor here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so here you can see that we don't have any band over here in EM, but once we have band in Garis, then you can see that there is some information are coming out over here, and we call this section as absorption bands, and these absorption bands are mineral specific, or you can say it is plant specific, or whatever you are going to, this is specific. Then we have high resolution imagery. Then we have many more bands over here. See, we have bands over here also. We have bands over here also. So we are not having more bands in this. So we are getting more number of absorption bands. So now number of X-rays, or you can say scanning of the surface, is increasing. Higher the number of bands, more better will be the scanning. So it is 50 nanometer, then we got 40 nanometer. Now we are getting more final resolution 10 nanometer. And see here that in 10 nanometer we are getting further information. And this is a radiometer diagram. In this radiometer diagram, if you see that here it has 1 nanometer. 1 nanometer means you are getting around 256 wavelength in this case. And if you try to see that we are getting now readings at every wavelength interval. So with hyperspectral resolution, we are getting more better impression of an object. And if you are getting higher spectral resolution images, then you can quantify up to a chemical level. Even if you can identify chemicals from your minerals, or you can identify two very close minerals by using hyperspectral signatures. So see, because of development of this hyperspectral resolution, or you can say more better spectral resolution, we are getting much more better data set as compared to previous thematic mappers. So that's why it make a revolution, and now we can even detect plant biochemical parameters. Even in the plant, we detect biochemical parameters like chlorophyll, phycocyanin, anthocyanin. In minerals, we can go for kaolinite, dolomite, and so many other things we can do with this analysis. Many people are using it for plant stress assessment, crop stress assessment, and so many other things. So it is now possible because of this development. So I'm trying to make it clear through this two images that we took a spectral signature of conifer grassland, broadleaf, dryland vegetation, and some other plants. So this is, you can say, this is 4 types of plant that we are taking here. For example, so this is a multispectral measurement. If you see multispectral measurement, we have only bands here. Here we don't have any bands here. Then we have bands, one single band here. Then we don't have any band here. Then we have one single band here. Then no band here. But in hyperspectral signature, if you see, instead of having one common value, here like one band give you average information over the pixels. In between this band, if you want some information, it is not available in multispectral because it is averaging the values. But if you see here that in between that straight line, we are also getting several bands. So it is not a straight line in case of multispectral because it is giving at each and every wavelength some information. So it is not a straight line. This is not averaging those values. it is giving every nanometer some information that we are not getting a state that we are getting in multispectral measurements. So here we are getting more information. So if we are getting more information, then we can quantify more number of things. Like here, we not able to quantify that leaf water, cellular mass setting, nitrogen measurement, but here we have data here. So we can go for all those parameters estimation also. Means we can do a lot of analysis of plant from biochemical to biophysical to several other levels using this spectral information. Similarly, we can go for the lignin, we can get information about cellulose, sugars, and so many other things. So these apps are covered by this this hyperspectral imagery, or you can say spectra. And here, this is average value. You are not getting any information. So I hope this is clear that here, in case of full length hyperspectral measurement, we are getting much more information as compared to multispectral imaging system. So here it is one of the hyperspectral airborne sensor. We call it AVIRIS. And if you take a AVIRIS cube means that I told in previous slide that it is a stacked image, just like our cards, playing cards that we call tash or something. So if you see the playing cards, it is same like this. Bands are also, and if you took a cube of this image or a small portion of this image, for example, here we took of a water body, okay, or we can take of a soil or atmosphere, or you can take our vegetation, that we take a small portion of this image. If it's subset a chip from or hyperspectral cube from a average NG airborne scenes, then if you plot that atmosphere has some different signal, spectral curve, and vegetation. So you can easily say that water is showing some different. There is a high absorption over here. That's why the reflectance is less in the vegetation because of our chlorophyll, lignin, and other absorptions. And if you want to quantify something like chlorophyll or any mineral composition or soil property or any other thing or water quality, you need these absorption bands. Okay, these absorption bands are very important because based on the chemical present in your water or minerals, there is a absorption of some this hyperspectral signals, and that's why these absorption band, we always try to find this absorption band, because whenever you try to build a new model for any parameter, like either it's a biophysical or biochemical or for minerals, you need to identify the particular absorption bands. When you have this particular absorption band, then you can quantify those things. So, and if you see, these absorption bands in Landsats are not very prominent, and that's why we cannot do biochemical, biophysical, or mineral composition or water quality analysis using this multispectral data set, because they don't have this particular information or absorption band in their images, because they have very few bands, very few continuous bands. So best thing with the hyperspectral that it provides you a contiguous or continuous bands, and this continuous bands giving you a lot of information. Okay, it's clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so how we can do this hyperspectral data analysis? So this hyperspectral data analysis, we have some general approaches. Like first, we have to develop a spectral library. Spectral library, like our DNA, we have different DNA. No two DNA are same. So what genetic library people do? Genetic library people try to get a particular important DNA from either plant or from human, and they try to make a library like you do with the books. So what we do with this process in hyperspectral data analysis, first we need to develop a spectral library. And how we can develop a spectral library means, if you remember the previous slide that I showed you the spectral signatures, and I told you that no two object has same spectral signature, right? Similarly, like our thumb impression, we don't have any two person have same thumb impression. Same with two species or two object or two minerals or all other minerals have very peculiar or unique spectral signature. So what we do, we have a instrument called hyperspectral radiometer at ground based, and what we do, we first have several minerals like calcite, dolomite, or kelonite, or some other minerals, and we take a spectral signature. Means we take a data from particular that particular object, okay, and then we try to get information, okay. And when you place that hyperspectral radiometer over some object, then you will see that you will get a spectral signature like I showed you in the previous slide. Like this, you will here you will get a spectral signature. Suppose if you if you take a spectral radiometer and if that ground based or spectral radiometer over a conifer forest, then you will get a signature of conifer forest. Spectral radiometer over the signature of the grass. So what we do, we take signature from different species, different minerals, and we save these spectra and spectral profile. And then in this way, if you have many spectral profile, then we make a library. So what we do, we make a library of different objects. So once you have the library, then you know what is the signature of particular object. And now we have, that is because that is from the lab, right? Okay, so this is what here I'm trying to do is, it is the hyperspectral radiometer. It is a full range hyperspectral radiometer, and it provides data in 350 to 2500 nanometer. And if you see the differences, means wavelength interval, it is providing every 3 nanometer and 10 nanometer in further wavelength. But here you will get in 10 nanometer, but here in VA and IR you will get in 3 nanometer. So what is it? It is a handheld spectral radiometer, and if you see here, it is a lamp, and here in this there is a optical power. So what we do, we place this probe over our object, okay, and this probe gets some reflectance through this optical fiber, and there are you can see several detectors here in this 3 band interval, V1, V1 and V2, shortwave infrared 1, shortwave infrared 2, and visible near infrared. So we have these 3 band, we get images, and when you output this optical fiber derived images in a CSV format or Excel format, you will get those signals. That radiometer is the most common radiometer that is used by from ground data collection, because what happened, whenever we are doing or measuring using a satellite generally have some errors. So what happened, we need to validate using our ground instruments also, so that we can have a better matching of the things. And sometimes what happened, when satellite is already calibrated, it is launched after having all the accuracy checks and everything. When satellite is launched, then what happened, we have a large spatial scene over an area. So if you know what is the spectral signature of conifer forest, and you want to identify conifer forest in a large area, so what we'll do, we will try to match those spectral signature with our hyperspectral images. So if you come back, that here, that if you take a simple 1 pixel over here, 1 pixel cube, then you will get some signature, right? So in this cube, you will have thousands of pixels. So if you want to find this type of spectral signature in this whole tile, how you will do that? Of course, you will try to match this spectral signature with each and every pixels. Whenever this spectral signature is matching, you will know that that is the particular object in that area. Suppose you want to search a conifer forest in this tile, and this is the spectral signature of conifer forest, then you try to match this spectral signature with each and every pixels, and whenever it is matching, you will say that that is a conifer forest. Okay, so for this we are using different algorithms, like spectral angle mapper is one algorithm. We are also using artificial intelligence technique and machine learning techniques for supervised classification. Supervised means it is a training based classification in which we first have to have the known signature, then we try to match this and get all the matching signature in this. And because we are doing something by our own knowledge, that's why it is a supervised classification. But sometimes we don't have any idea of the area. In that case, we do unsupervised classification, and in that we try to divide this satellite image into several things or several you can say objects, and then we go for a field sampling and trying to find what is the object over there, and then we accordingly we provided our legend. So in unsupervised classification, sometimes we have to go to the field to see what is the actual thing over here before means after doing the classification. In supervised classification, we already know the signature and everything by using our hyperspectral radiometer that handheld I showed, and then I run over the cube to get similar type of signature from the area. So both the approaches are slightly different, but first we have to have signature. In this case, if you want to go for species discrimination or mineral mapping or water quality, first you have to have signature of the particular thing in our laboratory. Okay, for example, if you want to go map total suspended solid in water, so in total suspended solids, first you have to have uh, water samples in your laboratory, and you have different level of suspended solids in that water sample. Suppose you have 4 beakers. In 4 beakers, in one you have 10 ppm of TCSS, or in 20, 30, and 40. If you see, there are different concentration of TSS in 4 beakers, and then you try to take a reading using this handheld spectral radiometer. So if you see where TSS, if you change the concentration, then at particular point you will get some absorption in all the 4 cases, because that is a pure TSS case. You have distilled water and you mix some suspended solid in that water, so you know that particular absorbance is related to TSS. Similarly with nitrate, if you want to estimate nitrate in a water, then we have several aliquots made up of nitrate. Like in, we take 10 ppm of nitrate, in another we take 20 ppm, 30 ppm, 40 ppm. In a pure distilled water, we make nitrate standards. Standards means we have pure form of nitrate and we mix in 4 different beakers. So if you take reading in 1 beaker by using this radiometer, in 2nd beaker, in 3rd beaker, in 4th beaker, then you will find that because that is a pure nitrate samples, so you will see a absorption related to that nitrate in that spectral profile. So we, in this way, we know that where that absorption band actually lies in that spectral profile. So once we have that absorption band, then we try to find the absorption band in the natural condition. For example, you have a lake and you have a satellite image over that lake. Then you have a spectral signature. We try to match our spectral signature of nitrate that you took in the you can say in the lab, to match with the, you can say with your satellite image, and then you will know that that much nitrate exists in the soil, in the water sample. But we need some more processing that we will see in next few slides, how to enhance those absorption bands, because once you enhance those absorption bands, then you can quantify those particular substance. Because what happens is a simple water body may have several different elements. Like if you have a sample of lake water, then you will have in same water you will have phosphate, you have nitrate, you have some other like blue-green algae, and there are several things you can have from a same amount of water. if you take some lake sample, and in your lab you do a pure analysis with only nitrate. So how to differentiate that particular water quality, that where is our absorption band, with other water quality parameters? So we need this lab absorption first. If you don't have this lab absorption, then you cannot match. So that is a process that we need to do a small scale experiment first. We take absorptions of that nitrate and all those things, and then we match with the our field data sets. Then you have several algorithm, other things to quantify those things. So what we have to do first, we have to develop a spectral library. Then we have to construct a spectral curve for relatively pure materials. Like I told that if you want to detect particular minerals, for example, you want to detect a gold mineral in some area. So if you want to detect a gold mineral, then what we have to do? Yeah, or gold linked mineral. What happened? Sometimes what happened? We don't have gold minerals on gold on the top, but there are some other minerals that is associated with the gold, like we call it proxy minerals. So what we try to find? We try to find those proxy minerals first. If we get those proxy minerals, then we have some confidence there is some chances of gold over there. So we're trying to find that proxy minerals first. So first, what we do, we will take a pure form of that mineral. Okay, like if you see what is the signature of calcite, calcium carbonate. So in lab, you can synthesize that calcium carbonate mineral, and in that calcium carbonate mineral, we take a powder form, we put in a you can say plate, and then we take a hyperspectral signature or hyperspectral radiometer reading. So that is a pure calcite reading. And now if you want to search calcite on a large area, so what we try to match that calcite pure pixel signature with in that particular satellite image. So we need a spectral curve of pure materials, like we did for nitrate in our lab. We did do for some other chemicals. Like if you want to do some other chemical analysis, then you have to have some spectral curve first. Then we try to find the peaks, that reflectance peaks, and then absorption. That I told that absorption is important. And then once we have peaks and absorption, then we can do this spectral analysis. And then we compare with our lab spectra that you do taken in your lab, and we try to match. Wherever there is a matching, we can say that wherever there is a high matching between the two spectra, we can say that mineral exists in that area. So even we can do this for two or even three different materials. Okay, if we have a compound mineral, for example, if you have calcium magnesium carbonate, and if you have some kaolinite, and both are mixed, because what happened in nature, if you maybe somebody from geology know that if you go for mineral analysis, or if you take a block of rock from some area, you will see that in same block you have shiny particles. In same block you have some dark color texture thing. Sometimes you have a light color texture thing. So in a same rock you will find different textures thing, because what happens during the rock formation, 3-4 minerals combine to form that rock. So if you take a signature of a particular rock using this hyperspectral radiometer, that you will find that, for example, if there is a calcite in that rock, then calcite is showing peak or absorption at different wavelengths in that signature. That if you have some kaolinite showing absorption at some other part of the wavelength. So in the same spectral signature, all the three minerals are giving different type of absorption bands. So if you identify those absorption bands, then you can detect minerals, that what minerals exist in that area. So in the basis of that, you can quantify more minerals. So this is a radiometer that I already told that in this radiometer, you will get 2151 bands. So it is used as compared to 264 bands in the satellite, 400 bands, maximum 400 band satellite is available in hyperspectral satellite. That is, you can say Prisma is available, and that is around 400 nanometer, 400 bands. So in that you have 400 nanometer contiguous information. But this hyperspectral radiometer, if you find that it is giving around 2151 bands. So it's a quite a huge information you are getting from this. So it can detect most of the things by using this radiometer by developing suitable algorithms. But of course, there are several fine level information also exist, but that for that we need ultraspectral. But ultraspectral will take time. But with this radiometer, we can do most of our analysis that is related with in our research.
So one question. So these
This
bands.
is how we will do in the lab. Yes, please. Yes, please.
So one question. So these bands, when you say 2151 bands, so the missing bands are on the edges or
Yes.
they're in between?
This is a continuous information. Suppose it is giving every 2 nanometer information. So every 2 nanometer you will get information. So there is a no missing band from 350 to 2500 nanometer scale. So if you divide every 1 nanometer, you will get much information. So there is no missing band in case of hyperspectral. But yes, please.
So when you say 2151 out of 2500,
Yes.
so the missing whatever is there is where are those bands sitting? They're in the edges or they're
Actually, yes. No, actually, what happened that there is a sharp changes in VNIR, visual near infrared. But if you go with SWIR 1 and SWIR 2, here, that in SWIR 1 and SWIR 2, it is giving every 10 nanometer information. So here you are getting a lot of every 2 nanometer, or you can even go for 1 nanometer information. But in this two channels, is divided into 10 nanometer information. So sometimes we do the band rationing and we are getting final resolution in between that. So here, if you see in this region, you are getting 3 nanometer around, and here this region you are getting 10 nanometers. So there is that's why we are not getting 2500 bands here. We are having some lesser band, but if you see that because it is giving every 10 nanometer and there is a very less gap between one band and the second band, so you are getting a continuous image. But with multiplex spectral, you are not getting this continuous image because it is a very large gap over here.
okay.
So this SWIR is designed because there is a very less changes in SWIR region as compared to VNIR. If you see most of the minerals and other thing, they are giving sharp change in this range. Okay, and other minerals like lignin and those they are giving in this range. So you will get less sharp change over here. That's why we have less band over here as compared to here. So this way, this is designed that you can get all the things in a single band by minimizing the cost and the complexity.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So what I'm trying to say over here that this is our one of the workshop that we organize, and here we are trying to train on hyperspectral remote sensing how this information. So you can see it is a tripod, and it is a very high precision lamp that we are using in this. And if you see this lamp, it have all the stabilizers, all the reflective things, so that it will not get a fluctuating light. And second, it is very mimicking our sunlight. So like sun has all the spectrum, sunlight. Similarly, this light has all the spectrum. So it is a quite high precision lamp, and one lamp is costing around 2 lakhs or something. Because it is giving very accurate. Because what happens if there is a fluctuation in light or something, then you will get there is disturbance in your spectral signature. So we need very high quality lamp, and then we will try to by using this white. You can see here. This is a white panel, or we call it white reference panel. So what is the white reference panel? If you calibrate your this is the lamp that we are taking reading on Himalayan region of some species, and this is in our agricultural region. So if you see that first we have to calibrate this by using this white reference panel. So white reference panel is a pure pure white. So in pure white you will get a pure white spectrum profile. And then when you put it on an object, then object, because it is already calibrated based on the pure white. So when you put on a object, then you will find that it will give you reading in reference to this white panel. So wherever, because you already calibrated with this white panel, it is because of white emission over here, you will get all rainbow of colors over here. And then when you put on an object, it will show some differences because of this, and this way this radiometer works. So first you have to calibrate on this white panel, stabilize your spectral signature. Once you stabilize your spectral signature, then put it on any object, and then it will give you several absorption bands, because in this white panel nothing is there, no chemical. It's a pure white panel, and it is a synthetic panel, and there is no chemical here, no other thing here. So when you calibrate over here, you will get a straight line of things. It calibrate our sensors, and because it is a totally a pure, no contaminants, no any minerals, no another thing. So when you put on any object, it will show a signature calibrated based on this reference panel. So first we have to do reference panel reading, make a error-free spectra, and then we put on a leaf or something or any object, and then you will get other spectra, and this way this radiometer know that what is the difference between pure and some object. Okay, so once you calibrated, you can put this radiometer on your shoulders also, and you can take a reading in the field also, but you need a good sunlight condition. Generally we take reading between 10 to 12 or 10 to 2 p.m. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. because that time sunlight is very good, and we take reading like this. And best is try to take your reading between 11:30 to 12:30, 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. because that time sun is on the top. You will get a full illumination, and you will get very good reading of this vegetation or species. Sometimes what happens, if canopy is very high, like some of the trees in Himalayan region is very high, you cannot go with your radiometer on the top of the tree. What we do, we take some leaf sample from those trees, and then we take a spectra from all those leaves after calibrating with this panel. So whenever you take reading, you again have to calibrate. This is a very easy job. First put your calibration, this probe over here. It will calibrate based on this white reference panel, and then take a reading. Again, if you have different species, again you have to calibrate, then take the reading. So if you have so many species, you have to calibrate each and every time. So that will give you good reading. But sometimes what happens, if you have a similar species, suppose if you have pine tree over there and we want to take a spectral signature of pine, 10, 20 pine trees. So we take reference panel reading just once, and then we take 10 samples of pine or 15 samples of pine by using this probe. Because samples are same, so we don't take a white reference panel each and every time. But suppose you want to take reading of pine and some other forest, like you can say Tectona or maybe some other tree, mango tree suppose. So if you take a mango tree, after taking a reflectance of lemon tree, you want to take a reflectance of mango tree, then you have to again do the white reflectance calibration so that it will be free of any contaminated signals. Because it is a white reference panel, no contamination is here, so it will be the pure spectra. And based on that divergence, it will give you reading from your object. So first you have to do the white light. Sometime in lab, we have two lamps, one from this side, and we put another lamp on this side. We put our object on the table, and then this light is falling on that object, and then we take this probe reading, or we take a radiometer from the top of that object, and we get the readings. So this is the process we do. But if you don't have this, so the lamp, sometimes what happens, this is a quite costly lamp. So what we do, we have this probe only. If you see in this probe, this light is already there. So it is quite a good instrument, quite a costly instrument, but a very handy instrument, because this type of light is already there, lamp is already there, and optical fiber is there. So when you put this, there is a light, this type of light coming out from this lamp, hitting that object, and then going through this optical fiber to your instrument. So it is very handy. Field we use this instrument instead of bring it because it's very problematic. If you're going in the field, you will not get all type of power sources and all those things. So we do this in your field system. This happens to be hard because this will be pure spectral signatures. Okay. Hello. Hello. I hope I'm not disconnected. Hello.
Yes, sir.
No, no,
Hello.
you're there, sir. You're fine. You're there.
Okay, not disconnected. Okay, so I think it's clear now. So here I'm giving some example. I'm talking about minerals from long time. So I'm giving some example here that this is a hyperspectral signature taken using that radiometer. So we have a kaolinite mineral, pure mineral. So we put our radiometer on the kaolinite mineral, and then we get this spectral signature. Then we put on a red brick another mineral, then we get another signature. In sandy loam, we have different signature. In concrete, we are getting some different signature. In grass, we are getting this signature. So if you see that all individual objects are responding well, if you see the reflectance, it is changing. And if you see based on the minerals, you are getting different. We can do this for the solids, we can do this for the liquid, we can do this for plant, and we try to get this spectral signature, and we save it, and we make a library. So if you see USGS, United States Geological Survey, that they have already built this mineral signature for around 300 or 400 minerals. So they made this pure mineral signature. And if you want to map minerals in your area, then you can have that USGS spectral library in your software. Like we are using Envy. Envy, there is a software. So in Envy, we import all those signatures, and after importing, we try to run algorithm, and wherever there is a or any other mineral from this USGS library that you are interested, you run that algorithm we call as spectral angle mapper, and you will try to match this spectra in that satellite image, and it will give you the area of kaolinite in that region. So it's a quite a rich library that you can use. So here now, how we will process those spectra, that is an important thing. That I hope you know the importance of that absorption bands. I told so many times that absorption bands are very important because that is related to particular chemical or particular thing in that area, right? So there are, you can see there are several absorption bands here. There is one absorption band here, some here. There is a very good absorption over here, some here. So there are absorption bands are here. It is a one mineral map or one mineral spectra that you can see lot of absorption bands here. So I told you that these absorption bands are related to chemical present in the minerals. Okay. So suppose you want to do an analysis. Sorry. Suppose you want to do an analysis of this hyperspectral bands. So how to get this first? Main thing is here, because sometimes what happen, if you want to a particular suppose you want to quantify nitrate from your water quality samples. So in nitrate, if you see, there is a absorption band maybe happened over here, maybe here, or maybe here. So for example, I'm taking example over here. Okay, so if you see, I don't know whether our absorption of nitrate is this absorption is because of nitrate or this one or this one. So we will get few absorptions over here, right? So what happened? We need to analyze all these absorption bands, and in software that we are using either R or maybe NV or maybe there are some other softwares, you can do analysis with all these absorption band together once at a time. Okay, you need to only define the wavelengths. So here in this case that I have defined that I need to go with these absorption bands. So for example, so here we need to find the tangent of this curve. So if you see there is a tangent over here and over here. So these are the wavelengths. Okay, now we need to enhance this absorption band. So what I tried to zoom it. I thought I will give you a hands-on also, but it is only 1.5 hour lecture, so and hands-on take nearly half day. So I'm not giving any hands-on, but it is very interesting to see that if you try to enhance this absorption band, there is a particular mineral absorption occur over here, and now we need to get this data sets. If we get these data sets, then we try to see what are the wavelengths in these bands, and we try to match with our nitrate data sets. For example, there are 0.6 to 0.7 we have data set, and it is divided every 1 nanometer. So in 0.2 to 0.7 we will have around 100 wavelengths, and if you compare your 100 wavelengths with your nitrate data where you are giving very high correlation, that wavelength is actually giving some response because of that nitrate. And then we build several indices, like you know some of the indices. NDVI you heard of, normalized difference vegetation index. Then you heard of several normalized difference water index, chlorophyll index. There are several indexes there. So what we do, we generally get this absorption area, get this wavelength, try to match with our ground data, and wherever getting high correlation, we say that that band is actually related to particular parameter. Okay. So here, uh, if you do this absorption area, then we do this. We try to subset this area, and this process we call as continuum removal. We do continuum removal to enhance this absorption area, because that happens. Here, if you analyze here, you will not get much of the data set here, because we need to analyze this absorption band. We need to find this depth. We need to find this. You can say the depth, width at each and every point. Then we try to match this with our other satellite images, and wherever it's getting this matching, we say that this is that particular mineral exists in that area. So how to analyze this thing further? So we call process called continuum removal. So we do continuum removal over here. So once you do continuum removal, it will normalize your reflectance from 0 to 1. This is a continuum removed reflectance, and it is now normalized from 0 to 1. And if you see that that is the wavelength that we selected in the previous slide over to here, now it is normalized. So now it is 1, and if you see here, you can now find the depth of this trough. Then we can get this width over here, then we can get this width over here. So you can measure all things here. What is the band depth, what is the band width, and same band depth and bandwidth and same type of signature we are trying to find in our satellite image. So whenever this type of, because it is a normalized graph, so we're trying to find similar type of things in our satellite image, then you will get idea of your you can better classify your satellite image. So we do this continuum remove band analysis using this. So you can see that you can identify the band of this, you can identify the width over here, what is the slope, you can see what is the slope, where we are getting the what is the value of absorption feature in this, what is the area of this absorption feature. So once you have all the information, you can match this information with your satellite image and data sets. So you will get much better result, you will improve your accuracy and other things. Otherwise, if you simply match your spectra with your satellite image, so it will give you some results, good results, but if you want more accurate, then you have to do all this continuum ratio and band depth and all this analysis. So here you can see that we have this our reference spectra. Reference spectra means you took this in our laboratory. Then we have this scaled reference. Scaled means we try to do between 0 to 1. Same. This reference we scaled it from 0 to 1, and then we have our you can say observed from satellite or something, and then we try to match these data sets. So of course there will not be 100% matching, but it will be close. So wherever we are getting very close relationship, you can see correlation is around 0.95, and if you see the fitting, it is around 0.90. So where we are getting very high fitting, you will get some you will say that that mineral that is actually of that minerals. So you can match. This is from your lab, this is from your field. If you're giving a very good match, then you can say suppose calcite, okay, and you're observed or you're trying to match with your laboratory calcite, and if it's matching well, then you can say that the particular unknown mineral is calcite. Because what happens in satellite, there are several pixels and you don't know what exists in that pixel. Okay, you don't know what actually exists in that pixel. So what happened, that is unknown pixel, and this is your scaled known pixel. So we try to match your unknown one with the known one. So wherever we are getting the best match, we can say that that unknown one is actually the particular mineral. For example, here it is calcite and it is a calcite. Okay, so this way we do, because in if we take a satellite image or if you take a field-based image, so what happens, if you in the field, it may be possible that day sunlight is very bright, so you will get very high reflectance. Okay, if it is not that much light, then you will get some low reflectance. But we generally don't worry about the reflectance jump, okay, because their absorption band is occur at the same area, whether it is a high reflectance or low reflectance. That's why we don't go with the peaks, okay, because peaks may be high or low because of sunlight or maybe the light source. If high light source, then you will get a more means more high reflectance. Means if sunlight is more, then you will get high value of this reflectance. From suppose you are getting 0.6, 0.7, but if sunlight is very high, then you may get 0.8, 0.9. But that part, this absorption will occur always in the same area. For example, this kaolinite absorption always occur in the same area, whether its reflectance is high or it is going down, but it occurs in the same area. That's why we are looking on this absorption, because that happen always in the same area, and we try to find the width and depth of this area. Because it will go up and down, but width will be same. Suppose it is up, it is down, but here if you continuum remove this one, and if sunlight is less, it is coming here, and if you compare, that width is almost same. There is no changing in the width. So here, that's why we are doing this thing, that we have similar type of normalization, and then when we compared and after doing the fit analysis, we can say that this much matching is there. Okay, so here you can see all this information over here, that you can do this matching analysis, and generally you can do this in your NV software as well as in your R software. R, if you know some language like MATLAB or R, you can do this in that also. If you don't know language, that also not an issue. You can go for NV, ENVI, NV software. You can do all this analysis in NV also. Okay, so there is options available for all those analysis. But this is the standard protocol that we follow. So here I'm taking lot of example several times about this dolomite. So if you see, we have this this profile, means the full spectral profile. Then we do the continuum removal for particle absorption band, and after continuum removal, you will get a scaled reflectance from 0 to 1. And if you see, if you compare calcite and dolomite, calcite is calcium carbonate, CaCO3, and dolomite is calcium magnesium carbonate. That you can see because of little magnesium, there is a change in this depth and this weight, and then this overall curve. You can see that there is a red shift here. In calcite, there is a more red shift, and in dolomite, there is more blue shift. So calcite, you will find that there is a difference between these two. There is a difference between all this depth and everything, weight, and then you can see that there is a shifting in the graph also. So because of magnesium is showing more absorption in this wavelength region, but calcite, because there is no magnesium, so its reflectance in this region. So you can easily identify both the minerals in a satellite image by using this standard practice. Similarly, if you are working on some atmospheric things, then you can easily identify CO2 and compare it with differentiate with H2O. So you can see that we have water ice and dry ice. Suppose in your lab we have dry ice that you dry ice. Dry ice and water ice, then you can see that there is a dry ice because of CO2. So you can see that there is a difference in both the spectral profiles. It's quite differentiating between water and ice also. So it is quite a strong technology to differentiate so many objects at a time. Similarly, here we try to do some of the analysis that we have two minerals over here. One is kaolinite and another one is calcite. And if you see that we took the reflectance for so many minerals, like upper one is calcite, you can see. I hope you can read, right? It's not very small. Can you read it? The top one is calcite.
It's quite small, sir.
Okay. So you can see my cursor. So it is a calcite. Okay, and on this below you can see pyrophile, and then you can see pyrophyllite. Okay, and then you can see some other like alunite and then alunite. Just for example, don't go with the names because I know many of you are not well aware of these minerals. So, but what I'm trying to show over here that if you see the spectral signature, it is very different. If you see the calcite, because here if you see the absorption is same. So here it is not to use one, but if you use this one, then you are checking that there is some high difference in absorption bands. So if you do a continual removal of this absorption band, and then in pyrophile this absorption band, and then alunite this absorption band. Okay, so if you do the first you have to take the spectra using radiometer that then plot it, then try to find the absorption bands, and after having the absorption bands you can have some minerals. These are unknown mineral. So now you need to match which one is actually this, because this is unknown and this is your known pixel. So what we do this mineral analysis tool, and it is also available in ENVI, this analysis tool that we call Mica. And if you do this absorption band analysis, so first you have to compare this absorption band with this one. So you will see that fit is very less. It is around 0.489 and depth is 0.115. So here you will see that there is a very less matching. Okay, so when you try to with the kaolinite and calcite, here you are getting some better match around 0.85 with this one. Again, you're trying to match this one with this one. Okay, then you can see that we are trying to match, and here in this case, if you see this case, you are getting match of 0.99. Your fit value is around 0.999. So this is the best fit. So we can say this one is pyrophyllite and pyrophyllite is matching with this absorption band with 0.999. So this is actually the particular spectra from the satellite is pyrophyllite. So similarly, we do for the species also, that we have several species spectra with us, and then what we do, we have some unknown species spectra. Then what we do, we try to match this with this unknown one, and where we getting the best fit, we are saying that that is actually that species. So here, whenever we are getting this best match, we are doing, so we are trying to do with all these 5-6 matching things. So we have around 6 closest spectra with this, and then we try to match all this, and wherever we are getting high match, we are saying that that minerals may exist in that area. Okay, so we do this not by eyes only. We have some this mica analysis tool. So we try to match, and it will give you several this type of images, and you can see that okay, this is my what we call a mineral. Okay, so it's quite interesting, and it is similar thing we use for the water quality analysis also. That we have we take some water quality, means water sample, and we take a spectra of that water sample in our lake water sample in the lab. Then we have pure spectra of nitrate, phosphate, potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium. Okay, and then we get the absorption band, and we try to match this absorption band with this unknown absorption area, and we try to match. And wherever we are having the best match, we are saying that okay, this nitrate one is matching very high with this absorption. So this is here we are having nitrate concentration, and then we use the same depth and other things to develop some indices, and then run on that lake satellite image to get the nitrate concentration in that area. Okay, so I hope some people are working on water quality analysis also, right? And some in geology, and some in ecology or some other thing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it's good. So I hope you are understanding. So I'm trying to take different example so that you can relate with your problems and try to use hyperspectral technology in your field. Okay, so it's clear. Shall I move ahead? If you have any question in this, please ask. No question? Please, yes.
Sir, it will be great if questions will be asked after the lecture.
Actually, what happened because they are very much into these slides, because they are trying to understand these slides, and if they have some because at the last maybe they will ask some different type of question, what is the scope, what is this, what is the software availability and all those things. But if you want to do some technical understanding of these graphs, that will be good. So it will be easier to explain one or more 2 times, so they will get in a more better way. Okay, that's why I'm asking if
Participants
anybody
have already written their questions in the chat box also.
Okay. So I hope you are understanding these graphs, because if you not asking any question, then I will assume that you are knowing these things. Okay.
So one question:
Okay,
this
so
spectral libraries. So the spectral libraries are readily available, or is it built? Should be built it for
Yes,
each
that I told. Yes, I told before that in USGS we have very good spectral library of minerals. And in our one of the major project in India, we are trying to do spectral library for Himalayan region for rare and economically important plant species. So that library will be ready maybe in this year. So that is also in progress. Because what happened, USGS also developed spectral libraries for vegetations also. But if you see the vegetation structure in US is very different than vegetation structure in India. If you see same type of pine tree, if you see the leaves of the pine tree in US, it is very thick, and or if you see in India, it is like very needle-like. So there is a there is a large difference in those things.
But how do you update that, sir? Suppose you find a new spectral signature, then you can update it
Sorry,
on.
please ask me again.
how do you update it? Suppose you find a new spectral image or signature. Doesn't
Actually,
match with the
it is a quite a rigorous exercise. So what we do, we take a sample, and then we have many contacts also. So what they do is, for example, there are people in NITs also and IITs also. So what they do, they send us the samples also. So for example, they went to the field and they have some rock samples. So they send us the sample. They told that because they are geologists, they know that in this there is a calcite, there is a other minerals. So we take a spectral signature of that and we save the library. Similarly, in Himalaya region, we don't have any library. So what we do, we collect several samples over there for different plant species, medicinal plants, and all those things. So we have now spectral library of medicinal plant, real and economically free species. So we are developing this type of library. So this takes time. This takes time, but even if we can identify 200, 300 plant species, that will be very good.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Sir, sir,
Hello?
could you please suggest? Yes, sir. I'm Audi Amal. Sir, could you please suggest
Yes,
the
sir.
freely available dataset link, sir, to avail the freely
Yeah,
available hyperspectral dataset?
actually, what is the field of interest, madam?
Sir, fire detection and medicinal
Okay,
plant
so fire detection.
identification.
Okay, so there are data sets available, like Prisma is available now. Prisma satellite
Sir, I'm
that
not
is
getting,
available
sir.
now for
Sir, I'm
hyperspectral
not
satellite
getting.
image.
Sir, I'm not getting.
Okay, Prisma P. Okay, can you hear me now?
Sir, yes, sir.
Sorry, there is some
Prisma.
problem outside. Some problem out. Yeah, now you can hear.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, yes. So what I'm trying to say that please, there is a Prisma satellite available, but I will write this at the last of the chat box. Okay, in the chat box also, the satellite
Okay, sir.
available.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
And
but Prisma
one
is
more
there.
thing.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And one more
Yes.
thing, is it possible
Yes,
to
ma'am.
have the ground truth data, sir, for the specific data set? Is it available with the ground truth data itself? Because getting the ground truth data is very difficult.
Some data sets are available, and
Okay, sir.
some data set you need to generate during your field sampling.
Okay. Can you kindly?
Suppose you want to go for field. Yes, please. If you want, I can help you in that. No problem. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So shall I
Sir.
move? Okay. Okay. So this part is clear. Okay, madam.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Okay. Okay. So this is the mineral mapping that after doing all those continuum removal, band depth analysis, then you can see that this is a chlorite, this is calcite, this is dolomite. So you can see calcite and dolomite. If you see the spectral curve, it is very similar. See, you cannot very clearly separate it, because calcite and dolomite, if you look by your it's very similar. But if you see that band difference analysis that I showed you here, that there is a difference. So you can easily differentiate by using that continuum removal, this calcite and dolomite. And we have this kaolite, gypsum, and aerolite. Gypsum is very good, means economically important. So here, after having all the spectral signature, we try to map. And you can see wherever we have alunite, it gives us meswite, calcite, all these minerals we can map over here and can show what their areas are. It is a rigorous exercise, but once you do all the exercise, you will get a very accurate map of all those minerals, and that is very important for us. This maps, because a lot of resources in this mineral map. Similarly, we do with the medicinal plants, we do with the other economically important plants and water quality. All these things are important. So if you have the spectra, then you can do these things. Okay, after doing all those band depth and continuum removal analysis and all those things. Similarly, we tried this experiment in our agricultural field over here, that we try to get the spectral structure of 4 different plants like cotton, chilies, rice, and sugarcane. So if you see, their spectral profiles are band depth, their sorry, their absorption peaks are all different. once we have this spectral signature, then we have the satellite image of the area, and then we classified it. Where we have that cotton field, we have chilies. What is the area of that cotton field? What is the chili area? Similarly, we can do plant stress assessment. That if plant is stressed, you will see that there is a difference in the change in the spectral signature also. So you can do large scale plant stress assessment also. Similarly, we try to build a spectral library for the chickpea, wheat, and sorghum. So you can see here that these signatures are also very different in different regions. If you look by your eyes, it looks very similar. But if you go with the absorption band analysis, you will see that there is a blue or either blue shift this side or red shift this side area in this absorption bands. So you can differentiate based on your absorption bands. Okay, so similarly here also you can differentiate all these species and crops by identifying this, then what is the depth, what is the width, and all those things, and then you can classify your satellite image. So here you can see that here we have dry pine, like pine. We take a pine tree reflection in Himalayan region. We have some grasses over there, and then we have some rangeland over there. And then we plotted all the crops. So if you see the dry pine, dry grass, and rangeland, all are having differences. Okay, and here if you see that here there is some absorption occur over here. Here we are not getting very clear absorption bands. In this case, there is here, but we don't have much absorption over here. But here you can see there is some absorption occur in that area. So we choose this wavelength for continuum removal. Okay, after this 3 regions, and after continuum removal, we can see that we compare our reflectance that is in the lab with this dry grass and dry pine reference, and we try to match it. And we can see that there is a 0.99 matching of this rangeland compared to dry grass. So, and here if you see rangeland compared to dry pine is very correlation is less. So rangeland is typically a grassland. If you see, it is an open grassland, and in open grassland, if we took a reading, and in dry grass reference we took a reading, because rangeland is a type of grassland. So if you see the matching, it is giving very high matching around 0.99. Okay, and depth is 0.11. So, and if you compare our rangeland with dry pine is a tree, right? It is not a grass. So if you see the matching with our reference one, matching is not that good. It is around only 0.87. So if you see pine and grassland, I hope some of you visited some hilly areas. You know, there are the cones, pine cones and everything. So maybe you remember that whenever that pine leaf fall, it look like grass because it is a needle-like leaves. So when it fall on the surface, it look like grass. So when you want to differentiate that grass, actual grass with pine, dry pine needles leaf, then you can differentiate here that rangeland or grassland is very matching very well, but pine tree is actually a leaf. It is not a grass type of thing. So matching is very less. So how we will do this processing? If you want to use some graphical user interface software like ENV, NV software. So what we do, we have some hyperspectral satellite. Like in this case, one freely available satellite is HyperIon or Hyperion, or some also tell is Hyperion, or we also got HyperIon. And then we have this is reflectance data of Hyperion. Okay, and then we have to do some pre-processing like image registration. Then there is some other pre-processing like geometric corrections. We need to do some subset. Like in your TV, whenever you have some less brightness, what you do? You increase the brightness, you increase the contrast so that you can have a proper view of the TV. Similarly, in hyperspectral images also, we do all those pre-processing, contrast, enhancement, brightness correction, and then we also do spectral means geometric correction so that light long will be accurate of this satellite image. So all those pre-processing we will do, and I hope it is covered in previous classes like geometric correction, georeferencing, So because it is a very simple basic remote sensing thing, so I hope that you know that processing things are new. But what we will do with the Hyperion, one important process is atmospheric correction. Why we need atmospheric correction? Because in atmospheric correction, we are taking satellite images from outside the Earth, and it is an optical image. Optical means it is a visual infrared image. So in between satellite and our Earth, there is an atmosphere, and in that atmosphere we have water vapor, we have ozone, we have aerosols, and all these three parameters, ozone, water vapor, and aerosol, cause problem in satellite remote sensing, especially in hyperspectral remote sensing. Because what happened? There is a sunlight sends some electromagnetic waves. It hits the ground Earth surface, and then it go to the satellite. So when it hit the Earth surface and go to the satellite, in between satellite, there is all this aerosol, water vapor, and ozone. And these three atmospheric parameters or atmospheric variables absorb some of the signals, and that's why we are not getting means full signal or full reflectance at a satellite level. So how to get those full signal, or how to get that full reflectance? And for doing that, we use this tool called atmospheric tool called FLASH. It's a fast line of sight atmospheric analysis of hyperspectral tubes. So we call it FLASH because it is easier to say. So we use FLASH for the atmospheric correction, so that we can quantify how much reflectance is lost due to ozone, how much reflectance is lost due to water vapor and due to aerosol. And we calculate the loss, and then we add in our actual hyperspectral reflectance to get the real values. So we usually, through this, we quantify all those contributions because of this aerosol and ozone and water vapor. And once we got their contribution, we add that contribution in our actual reflectance. Means that is captured by satellite to get full reflectance values. So this atmospheric correction is very important to remove the effect of gases. Okay, and then we do this. If you have a geometric correction, suppose your scene is tilted, so we need to do geometric correction so that it will be in the right shape. Then we remove noise from the satellite. We call it minimum noise fractions, because if you see, maybe some of you is from electronics background or some other electrical background, that whenever we are getting some signal, even in your camera, if you slightly shake your camera, then you will not get very good quality image. That will be blurred, right? So there is a noise in the image because of slightly shaking of your camera. You get noise in your photograph, in your mobile photograph. So same type of things happen in some of the satellite bands also. You get some noise in those bands. Okay, so we need to estimate those noise fraction and remove those, because that noise fraction will create problem in your overall analysis. But those are the instrument problem because of some filter problem, because the bands are actually taking data through some filters. If that filters are noisy, then you will get noise in your bands also. Okay, so we need to remove this noise by using MNF transformation, and after that we try to get a pure pixels. For example, you want to in one pixel, if there are for example, pixels, right? So in pixels, if you see their pixel size is around 30 meter by 30 meter. So size of pixel is 30 meter by 30 meter, and in 130 meter you can have several things, several objects. Like if you see your house, in your 30 meter by 30 meter area in your house, you have your buildings, you have your garden, you have some trees also. So in one pixel you will get all these three things: your building, your garden, your trees. So, and what is pixel? It is average value of all those three, because in one pixel 30 by 30 meter, it will average your reflectance from building, garden, and tree. So you will get one value. Okay, So that is not a pure pixel actually, because it has all the three elements in that. So how to identify only pure pixel, like grassland, for one pixel there only one pixel should be urban area, and one pixel is because
Sir, you are lost. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir.
okay. So what I'm trying to say here, that whenever you go and buy some clothes, you don't buy a similar type of cloth or similar color cloth, because that is not giving any more look for any more information. If you see the correlation of two blue t-shirt, it is coming as 0.9, 0.9, and there is no more use. If you if you have that cloth, uh, every day people will say that you are using that cloth every day, you are not using new clothes. Similarly, over here also, that if you have two similar bands, there is no use of using those two similar, because you are not getting any unique information. And if you are not getting unique information, hello. So when you are getting this pixel purity index, then what happen? We will get best pixels, and then we after getting those best pixel, we try to find similar type of pixel in our satellite image by using some algorithm like SAM or MTMF. This type of algorithm. SAM is most popular because it gives you information on based on angle, and then based on that we do the mineralogical mapping, and then we also have some ground data to match all those validate all those images. Okay, so this is a whole process that we do on hyperspectral image, from pixel purity to visualization to some pure end members. Like end members are pure pixel members, and then we use this end member in our satellite image, classify, and then we get our map. So this is the example of flash that using for atmospheric correction. Then in flash, you need to have your satellite image. Then you need to have your latitude, longitude of your satellite image. So if you download a satellite image, all satellite image comes with metadata. In metadata, you will get your latitude, longitude, sensor height, how height of the sensor, then what is the elevation, you get your pixel size, when that sensor is the flight data of that sensor. So you will get from that metadata that is provided by all the satellites. You will get all this information. Then if you are in tropical areas, like India is tropical, we can choose tropical model over here. And then you want to correct atmospheric noises. Most of the noises is because of troposphere. So we use atmospheric model called tropospheric. Then we do the retrieval. Then we do some multiplier over here based on your area. And then visibility we can get from your local website. What is the visibility on the particular day, and then apply. So it will correct your satellite image with respect to your atmospheric noises. So it is a simple that is also available in NV, that you can do this flash correction in your NV, and you will get a atmospheric corrected satellite image. Similarly, pixel purity index I already told that is the most pure pixels in your multispectral data set. and it is generally we do n-dimensional scatter plot. We do, and we have to have this MNF images, this minimum noise fraction images, and after reducing those noises, then we get this pixel purity index, means pure pixels, and that's this pure pixel we use for end member. And end member, after doing this end member analysis, we can go for the classification. MNF already told that is similar to PCF, and it is used to remove the bad band from your satellite images. And this spectral angle mapper is simply is simply used to match your reflectance curve. You know, I showed you the spectral profile or spectral signature. So how to match your spectral signature obtained from your lab with the satellite one. So for that, we are using this spectral angle mapper classification. And if you see, it is matching your reference with your object, and trying to minimize this angle using this. And once it is minimized, it will match and it will give you the best match pixel over the area. So it is what is the best advantage with SAM, that if there is a high light or low light, it will not affect your algorithm performance, because it is insensitive to illumination, and it considers only the vector direction, not the vector length. So length, if you consider length, then you need to have some different algorithm, but it considers only the direction part and matching it. So it will not affect your time of satellite image acquisition. Suppose you want to acquire image at 2 o'clock, and your ground collected spectra is at 10 o'clock. There is a differences in their reflectance, but it is considered in the direction, not the length of those reflectance profile. So it will not affect your classification performance. That's why SAM is much better than other algorithms. So after taking the spectral signatures of different varieties, like here, in fact, we have different rice varieties also. If you see that we have different type of BPT, MTU, different rice varieties. We have different sugarcane varieties, cotton varieties, chilies varieties. Even within your crop type, you can do species level discrimination. Like you can differentiate two type of basmati rice, even by using this hyperspectral delimiter, because it is giving all the rice have different leaf thickness, different type of cuticle, different type of biochemical parameters. Because some basmati rice are smelling very good, some are not. Why some are smelling good? Because they have some chemicals in one rice, but it is absent in another rice. So you can easily detect those type of species differences also. That is quite powerful. Similarly, it is you can see the mineral mapping of this crop type mapping of Rajasthan area. You can do this crop discrimination analysis by using Everest-NG. It is the most advanced Everest-NG satellite. Means in the hyperspectral new generation, or you can say next generation, and it is giving quite high accuracy by doing in this crop type classification. Similarly, as I told about that that crop biotic stress, that even if you have a satellite image, like it is a average hyperspectral image, and you can do the healthy and diseased plant. That here you can see, you can, the green one is healthy and red one is diseased. There is some form of disease happened to that area. So if you take a spectra of two plants, one is healthy, other is diseased. So you can see there is a difference in absorption band. A healthy plant is showing different, and disease one is showing different. So you can easily differentiate between this healthy and diseased plant, and then you can have this absorption band and then classify this satellite image. Then you can know which one is healthy and which one, how much area is diseased. So it is cost very important for crop yield management and crop monitoring and reducing our losses. Similarly, urban mapping, you can do urban green area mapping in this this one. You can map sparsely vegetated area. You can map burnt areas. You can map bare rocks, how much area is burnt, how much area is severely burned. So many, I mean, you can detect, because if plant is burned, so if plant is healthy, burnt plant is generally stressed because there is a lot of soil moisture loss from the plant, and in healthy, they are generally more giving you more better values in terms of NDVI, in terms of other indices. So you can easily differentiate between the burn and the non-burn areas. So it is quite good in that thing also. Then water quality, that we have chlorophyll, then the chlorophyll and other type of things over here, that we have phycocyanin content, we have phytoerythrin, we have carotenoid, CF. These are different biochemical parameters that exist in water quality: chlorophyll, carotenoid, phycoerythrin, phycocyanin, and chlorophyll. So if you see the reflectors of all these curve, you can see that there is a difference. And once you have this absorption band and differences, and if you classify, you can get your mapping. That red area is high in chlorophyll, and then you can see blue areas is less. You can see all these colors. You can find the quantity of all these chemicals. So you can possible soil mapping. You can do different type of ions in this soil. Similarly, you can do in plant. You can do cellulose, lignin, dye vegetation, well fertilization, lot of things over here. You can do for snow analysis. You can do snow size mapping, grain size mapping. You can do atmospheric cloud size radius and all those things. You can also get a different type of cloud spectra. Like if you see your cirrus cloud, or you can see cumulonimbus, this type of cloud you can differentiate by using this hyperspectral imagery. You can detect different type of snows also, snow size also. So a lot of things possible over here. Here we try to do is for phenological stages. We have different wheat crop in our field, and with different growth stages, we take this in spectra. So you can say with the stages, you can also quantify the different stages of crop. So you can try when is the flowering, when is the booting. So you can plan accordingly. So you can also go with the stages, and stages are very important to optimize your yield. Okay, so these type of things are possible. Similarly, we do for the plant species identification in the hilly area. We develop these spectral curves of different species. Then we have this Hyperion image, and then we try to run our algorithm, that SAM algorithm actually, and we try to do the continuum removal of these absorption bands, and we try to find this absorption area in the satellite image, and then we got all those species in the area, dominant species in the area, this dominant species, by using these spectral curves. So this is also possible. So this is a one book that we published in Hyperspectral Remote Sensing Theory and Application. So you can have a look. We try to explain most of the things in this books also, all level of processing and all those things. And thank you.